Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. The EU Council President says African Union countries joining the G20 would be a welcome step. He also urges not to see the summit as a platform to solve all major global problems. Heads of delegations continue to arrive in the Indian capital for the G20 summit. US President Joe Biden en route for New Delhi. And Coco Gauff and Sabalenka set up a final clash in the US Open. New Delhi is welcoming leaders from around the world for the G20 summit, which begins on Saturday, happening at a brand new state-of-the-art convention center called Bharat Mandapam. US President Joe Biden is en route to India to attend the G20 summit. The White House said the US President will work with allies and partners to further strengthen the global economy. President Biden's office said he's looking forward to continuing to build on the progress on a range of global issues and reaffirming the US commitment to the G20 as a premier forum for economic cooperation. US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said the United States is willing to work with India to draft a communique at the end of the Group of 20 summit in New Delhi over the weekend. At a briefing on Friday morning in the Indian capital, Yellen said there was significant progress made on international debt relief efforts and providing relief to over-indebted countries under India's G20 presidency.
We remain committed to extensive and strategic multilateral action in response to Russia's war on Ukraine. We also remain committed to support for Ukraine and recently put forward a supplemental funding request. We're also grateful for the involvement of our partners, including the €50 billion package proposed by the European Union and the $15 billion International Monetary Fund program. Last but not least, continuing to advance the U.S.-India relationship will be a priority this week. We highly value our bilateral relationship with India. In fact, this is my fourth time in India over the last year, making it the country I visited most frequently as Treasury Secretary. We also welcomed Prime Minister Modi to the U.S. in June. The U.S. is home to the largest Indian diaspora outside of Asia and is India's largest export market. Expanding our bilateral economic ties and our cooperation on global challenges is crucially important to us.
Continuing our coverage of the G20 summit and our in-depth look at some of the member nations and the prominent men and women taking part in it, here's a look at US President Joe Biden's profile.
Joseph R. Biden Jr. is the 46th President of the United States of America. He was born in 1942 in Pennsylvania and graduated from the University of Delaware and Syracuse Law School. At 29, he became one of the youngest people to be elected to the U.S. Senate, and he represented Delaware for 36 years. Biden was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and played a pivotal role in shaping America's foreign policy. He was vice president under Barack Obama and then became president in 2021.
As the arrivals of world leaders continue, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni reached New Delhi for the upcoming G20 summit. She was received by Minister of State for Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare, Shobha Karandiaje.
Giorgia Meloni is Italy's first female prime minister. But the 46-year-old former journalist, who is a native of Rome, is no stranger to public affairs, becoming a political activist in her teens. She was only 21 when she was elected as a councillor for the province of Rome. 8 short years later, she became a member of parliament as a candidate of the National Alliance Party. In 2008, at just 31, she was appointed the Minister for Youth as part of Silvio Berlusconi's government. 3 years later, she helped found a new political movement, Brothers of Italy, which gets its name from the national anthem. Last year, in Italy's snap election, the centre-right coalition, led by her party, won an absolute majority.
So leaders from around the world continue to arrive in the national capital, New Delhi, for the G20 summit. Now, next in the series is Argentina President Alberto Fernandez, who was given a traditional welcome on arrival.
Fernandez was born in 1959 in Buenos Aires. He is a lawyer by profession. Alberto Fernandez entered politics in the 1980s, was first a member of Justicialist Party. He later became the party's president. Fernandez was appointed the Chief of Cabinet Ministers in the year 2003 and again in 2007. Fernandez has been serving as the President of Argentina since October 2019.
European Council President Charles Michel also arrived in New Delhi to attend the G20 summit. So, European Council President Charles Michel spoke on the commitment of nations towards resolving climate issues and the inclusion of African Union in the grouping of G20.
First, for the emerging countries, I don't think that this G20 will resolve in 2 days all the problems of the world. They will change them. But I think it can be a bold step in the right direction. And we should work to make it happen and to support the Indian presidency. And this is how the EU is considering its role in the multilateral approach. Point one, a concrete example. For many years, I participated in multilateral meetings. The 100 billion pledge for climate, especially for the most vulnerable countries, probably this year, in 2023, we will succeed to fulfill this promise. And it's urgent to fulfill this promise. It shows a clear and a concrete commitment. And on the EU side, for many years, we have been able to fulfill our promise. And we are very pleased that some other countries are now making the step, which is extremely important. This is something which have an effect for those countries. And I think in preparation of this COP that will take place in Dubai, that the conversation we'll have in the plenary sessions, but also in the different bilateral meetings, in the margins of the G20, will be helpful to understand better what we can do. You know that last time, for instance, we made a step in Egypt regarding the loss and damage, but this is a principle. Now we need to see what it means in terms of modalities, in terms of financing. Each meeting should be used as a step to converge, as a step to bring more fairness at the international level. And in the African Union, let's see what will be the decision. But one thing is clear, the EU supports the African Union membership in the G20.
So Charles Michel welcoming the inclusion, if it happens, the African Union into the G20. And he also is very realistic. He's saying let's not see the summit as being able to solve all the pressing global problems. So a bit more now on the profile of Charles Michel.
Charles Michel is the president of the European Council. He was born in Belgium and studied law at the University of Brussels. Michel was elected to Parliament and within a year named the Minister for Interior Affairs, then Minister for Development Cooperation. He was a spokesperson and the leader of the Reformist Movement Party and went on to become Prime Minister. He became President of the European Council in 2019 and was re-elected to the post last year.
And for more on our special G20 coverage, we have our correspondents joining us now. Nandita Dagar is joining us from the New Delhi airport and Akshay Dongre is at the summit venue, that is Bharat Mandapam. First to Nandita, we know several world leaders have arrived in New Delhi. Who all are expected to arrive in the hours to come?
Yes, we know that President Joe Biden, the president of USA, has already had his wheels up of the Air Force One and he will be landing late evening today. And of course, the Italian Prime Minister, Ms. Giorgia Meloni, is already here. Several delegates, and they are being received by several very special emissaries from Prime Minister Modi. So it's a huge moment for India because India has been on the rise for the past decade or so in terms of its economic, military, soft power might as well, and this would be the cherry on the cake or the icing on the cake, as it were, as India is hosting the G20 summit with heads of state of US, France, all these G20 countries, many of whom Prime Minister Modi shares good personal rapport and camaraderies with. He's already met President Joe Biden in May and had a state visit there, the first ever by any Indian head of government. So India has already rolled out the red carpet. More than 200 meetings have taken place all across the country in the last 1 year, and the delegates, of course, have had a chance. The ones representing in the working groups as well as the the Sherpa tracks, the finance tracks, the engagement groups, they have got an idea of India's rich culture, traditions, food, cuisine. Every part of India has had a different experience, and these meetings, because this was Prime Minister Modi's very own idea that let's not just restrict the G20 meetings to Delhi alone. Let's have them in all parts of the country. Let's give them a flavor of India's northeast. So they were held in Nagaland, Mizoram, in India, in Goa. So all these places, and India is assuming the role of a global leader, as you know, Tanvi, because all the world leaders, they look upon Prime Minister Modi and India for future direction in challenges such as climate change, terrorism, eradication of poverty, the also ending of conflict, because as we saw in the Ukraine war, we saw so many world leaders talk to our Prime Minister Modi, our Foreign Minister, they spoke to his counterparts about the Ukraine conflict. So India holds a very, very prominent place and does have the bargaining power now as we have arrived on the world stage. So It is a very befitting moment. It's an honor for me also for covering
yes,
this
indeed.
part
Honor
of the national
for all of us, and a lot
of our
is,
country.
Yes,
and
a lot is on India's shoulders to find solutions to the most pressing global issues right now. Let me go over to Akshay Dongre now. Akshay is at the summit venue. Akshay, you're at the heart of action there. It all starts tomorrow. Tell us what bilateral meetings are expected on the sidelines apart from the main summit.
Well, the most important and one of the most important, rather, Tanvi, a bilateral meeting will take place today. As soon as Joe Biden arrives here in New Delhi, he will be straight going to the residence of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the two leaders will have bilateral meetings. They will be discussing a lot of issues that have been on the agenda. But there are more than 15 bilateral meetings that are planned in these 3 days that will start from today. So besides the US, the Prime Minister is going to hold meetings with Bangladesh, Mauritius, and that these meetings will take place at his own residence. There are other meetings that are planned tomorrow, in fact, a range of them. And besides the G20 summit, there will be bilateral meetings with Prime Minister of UK. There will be a meeting with Japan. There will be a meeting with Germany and Italy. And even on 10th, there will be a small meeting with the French president. There will be pull-aside meetings with Canada, with There will be a bilateral meeting with Comoros. There will be Turkey, UAE, South Korea, European Union. So all of these are meetings that are decided, that are going to take place in the next few days. And these are highly placed sources that are giving us this information about these planned bilateral meetings. So a lot on the agenda. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to have very busy 3 days. He will be meeting leaders after leaders, and besides the meeting that will take place here at the Bharat Mandapam of the G20, where all these leaders who are arriving in New Delhi will gather. There will be other meetings as well that will be on the sidelines of the G20 summit. So we can expect a lot of these issues, especially that concern the global south, issues that concern Indo-Pacific, issues that concern economy, food crisis. All of these are to be discussed as far as not just the G20 agenda, but the bilateral agendas are concerned. Tanvi?
Okay. Thank you, Akshay Dongre. Thank you, Nandita Dagar, for tracking these updates of the G20 summit for us. Now, here's an exclusive preview of the delegates' offices at the summit venue Bharat Mandapam by India's chief G20 coordinator Harshvardhan Shringla.
So we are just a few hours away from the New Delhi G20 summit, and we are here at the Bharat Mandapam. This is the delegate center, hall number 14, where the official delegations will be housed. So this is where we start. Here we see the Mother of Democracy exhibition, and this exhibition really traces the evolution and the history of democracy in our country. We are the largest democracy in the world. You can see that these are all interactive panels. They tell a story through the historic evolution of our times. Here you can see that there is a formal welcome tableau which has the flags of all of these countries are here, and here it is in several different languages. You know, you can see Shwagatam in Bangla, you have Bienvenue in French, you have it in German, Willkommen. Every G20 language is represented in this tableau. And here we have again a panel that indicates all of the different areas of this hall. Whichever area you want to go to is here in the interactive panel. There are country offices, so we can go to some of them. There are 29 offices of different countries, the G20 invitee countries, and 14 offices of international organizations. Let us look at the US country office. You have the flags of both the guest country as well as our flag. You have all facilities. There are laptops, there are photocopiers, there are workstations, there is a seating area here. And an inner office for the senior delegates, ministers, etc. They can spend time here. You also have a conference table here. Through these televisions, you will get a live screen images of all the discussions at the summit room. This is an area where delegates can sit down and they can spend some more informal time. They can meet other delegation members. So here you see a very nice background. This is a selfie point. International delegates can come here and take photographs and take memories of India's G20 New Delhi Summit 2023. We come to a very special part of our delegate center. The first pavilion on our right side as you come in is the RBI Innovation Hub. And this RBI Innovation Hub will exhibit some of the latest cutting-edge fintech initiatives. You can see the Digital India Experience Zone, and this is basically going to showcase the India Stack, showcase all the digital public infrastructure, right from Aadhaar to UPI. There is a very interesting one which is eSanjeevani portal, from which any delegate who is suffering any sickness or any malady can come here, digitally consult a doctor, get immediate medication, get immediate prescriptions, and he will have the advantage of the best medical treatment digitally. You have Bhashini, you have DigiLocker, you have Diksha, Aadhaar, UPI. So this Digital India Experience Zone is a very special one. It will enable us to showcase India's cutting-edge technologies to the world that will come here from the 9th and 10th of September 2023.
So if you're thinking you cannot be around the summit venue, Bharat Mandapam, you've all seen the inside spaces, what they look like, and we will get you continuous coverage on the G20 summit right from now on till the end of it. You're watching DD India Live, coming up on the show. The US has announced another assistance package for Ukraine to boost its counter-offensive. The UN's climate change body is warning that heat extremes will be the new normal if the burning of fossil fuels continues. And the second women's semi-final clash has come to an end. Find out who made it after the break.
As the world awaits its arrival in India, Delhi is all decked up for G20. The wait is over. Stay tuned for all the updates from G20 Summit, only on DD India.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Tanvi Taneja. On to the US defense package for Ukraine. Now, the US has announced a new security assistance package to support Ukraine. This includes equipment for air defenses, artillery munitions, and other capabilities. A spokesperson for the US government says the move will help Kiev counter Russian attacks.
These are anti-tank rounds. They're meant to pierce tanks, and they're meant to be used. They will be used very effectively on the battlefield. These are standard issue rounds. These are what these Abrams tanks will use, and many militaries across the world use depleted uranium in their tanks. So we feel that these will be the most effective rounds to counter Russian tanks, and will help will help the Ukrainians to defend the battlefield.
The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change will publish its new report ahead of COP28 in November. The convention's report aims to track the course of climate change efforts made around the world. It will lay the groundwork for talks at the COP28 summit, which will be held in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, in November and December this year. Now, climate experts are warning that the world must limit the burning of fossil fuels, otherwise extreme heat will be the new normal.
This is a new normal or not is something we cannot answer, because what the new normal is, we will only find out once we've stopped burning fossil fuels. As long as we continue to burn fossil fuels, these events will become more and more frequent. So we definitely have to get used to them. But if we don't stop burning fossil fuels soon, they might not be the new normal, but the new cool extremes.
Now, updates from the ASEAN summit. Bangladesh President Mohammad Shahabuddin has called upon the international community to urgently find solutions to the Rohingya crisis. On the occasion of the inauguration ceremony of the 18th East Asia Summit, Bangladesh President pressed to commence safe, voluntary and sustainable repatriation of Rohingyas living in Bangladesh.
Further delay to commence safe, voluntary and sustainable repatriation and shortage of humanitarian support may put the entire region at risk. We call upon the international community to urgently act on this very urgent matter.
And next we take a look at other stories making news in India today. Ahead of the G20 summit, the Indian government plans to credit up to $12 to the wallets of all G20 delegates. They are being used to demonstrate the ease of digital payments in India by utilizing platforms such as Aadhaar, DigiLocker and Unified Payments Interface. Water levels have returned to normal in the northeastern Indian state of Assam after widespread flooding forced the evacuation of thousands of people. Relief centres have been opened to help affected residents, with authorities saying more rain is on the way. Emergency teams are at the scene of a massive fire which broke out in a slum in India's financial capital Mumbai just hours ago. There are no reports of injuries, with an investigation into the blaze underway. On to sporting action now. News from US Open tennis. World number 4, Coco Gauff, has reached the US Open final after beating Karolina Muchova in straight sets. Gauff beat Muchova 6-4, 7-5. Gauff could not convert a match point when serving at 5-4, but broke Muchova to seal victory after winning a 40-shot rally to create the 6th opportunity. She will face second seed Aryna Sabalenka in Saturday's final. The second seed, Aryna Sabalenka, staged a remarkable comeback to make it through to the US Open final. Her opponent, Madison Keys, cruised through to the first set 6-love, but Sabalenka took the second and then won a match-deciding tiebreak. It's Sabalenka's second Grand Slam final of the year after winning the Australian Open in January. So that's all in this edition of DD India Live. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at DD India Live. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching. Namaskar.